So we are here among an ocean of roadsters at where else could it possibly be but Gruber Motors. And if you're at Gruber Motors, what are you going to do except talk to Pete Gruber himself and find out what is going on here. I'm Brian. Welcome to Futuraza. Pete, let's take a walk, see what we got here.
Sure. So in the main shop area here, first thing that we see out of the lab is test equipment that we had to develop to work on Tesla Roadsters. You can't buy this off Amazon. This is all highly custom stuff. These are called 11-point chargers that we developed that allow us to charge all 11 sheets either independently or all together to balance them.
Wow.
We use DC to DC converters by a large power supply being fed. Here we've got a 400-volt power supply as well that does trickle charging when a Roadster is bricked. And we have a number of smaller versions as well that do the same job. This is one of our local customers. He's got 120,000 miles on this 2011 Roadster. And it's one of the highest mileage Roadsters that we're aware of. So we've been carefully tracking this to see how the battery is aging. And so far, even though he's got a low calculated amp hour capacity of 87.7 or so, he still has power in the cells, which is one of the early indications of a failed batch of cells that they were using in 2015 or 2016 that are now actually losing power.
Wow.
So we think that is going to be the end of life condition for the legacy Roadsters ever since 2008. But it hasn't happened yet, which is a good thing, at least with the first generation packs. Walking through here, we've got our battery carts. We have a number of these.
So you said sheets earlier. You can test all the sheets, and this is a sheet?
This is one of 11 sheets in a Tesla Roadster. When I take you in the battery bunker, which is a dedicated charging system, isolated from the building, you'll see a whole bunch of these, and I'll show you what we do and how we charge.
And you can see right there are all of the individual cells.
Mm-hmm. There's 621 cells inside a sheet. They're the same size as a vape cigarette cell, and they're connected on both sides with a fusible link wire.
Oh my gosh, that's the wire.
Mm-hmm. And each of these bonding plates allows these bricks, as they're called, there are 9 bricks per sheet, to be connected in series for a total of 36 volts.
So because there's 6,831
per car.
This teeny tiny wire is enough because we're pulling how much?
It's I don't know
Almost
the amperage
none.
off the top of my head, but it's enough to power the car, but at the same time provide a fusible link, which is part of the safety reason that it exists.
Yeah, pulling very, very small amounts. Okay, one of the older ones.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a visual difference between the old ones and the new ones?
Yes, and I'll show you some of the subtle differences. There are 2 types of Roadsters. There's a 1.5 series, which is VINs 1 through 500, and then 501 through, in the US at least, 1459, 1464, I believe, with the final 5. The differences typically are the shifters. In the 2.0 Roadsters, or the second generation, you've got a push-button shifter system. In the 1.5s, well, we'll see plenty of them. I'll show them to you here in a moment. This particular car here we were looking at a minute ago has a bunch of body work that's been done. And
this has already been done.
This has already been done.
Oh, that looks...
If you had seen the before shot, this was cracked and busted. There were pieces missing here. This quarter panel on both sides was crushed because it had been rear-ended very hard. So what we have to do is rebuild all of this carbon fiber in order to put these cars back on the road, because none of these body panels are reproducible at this point. And you can't go to Lotus and buy Elise parts because the Elise parts are different than the final version Tesla Roadster.
Yeah.
So a lot of the body work ends up being recreating some parts and then repairing parts like this.
From here, can I see where the frame is stretched?
You can see, no, he's got everything closed up here. Otherwise it would be...
Because it is inches longer?
Yeah, what they had to do was, in order to fit that 1,000-pound battery pack, and we'll get up close with one of those here in a moment, personal, they had to stretch and widen the frame. enough to where the body panels from a Lotus Elise would no longer fit onto the Roadster.
It looks stupid.
Yeah. So they ended up going to a couple of companies. One was in the UK, Magna. They failed. Elon then went to France and found Sotira. Sotira did a much better job of making the body panels necessary for the Tesla Roadster.
Okay. Oh. What do they weigh? The Roadster, I mean.
2,700 pounds.
That's remarkable.
The battery pack is just under 1,000 pounds, and this is what it looks like once it's been pulled out of the car. You can see the cavity here.
Oh, wow.
And let me point out some of the things here. This is the drive motor here. It ends right here. It's about the size of a crock pot. And what makes electric vehicles so potent and fast, that little guy, the size of a crock pot, puts out 288 horsepower at 0 RPM.
Wow.
To do that with an internal combustion engine car, you'd have to have 1,000 pounds of mass.
Yeah.
So drive motor, gearbox. Originally they had a 2-speed gearbox, but because of the enormous torque, they were burning up clutches. So they went with a single speed, which simply means now the top speed on a Tesla Roadster isn't Autobahn speeds. It's 130 miles an hour.
Right.
I just came back from Germany and Austria, and I had a rental car that I got up to 140 miles an hour. I couldn't have done that with a Tesla Roadster, even though off the line, this was infinitely faster than anything I drove there.
And that's why the Taycan probably has 2 gears.
Yeah, yeah. So this is the 1,000-pound battery pack. It goes up inside that cavity where the engine used to be on a Lotus Elise.
So is this Lotus and this Tesla?
You know what? This is also Tesla.
Wow.
And it was an extension. Only 7% of this car today is Lotus, and it would be the suspension components, like the control arms upper and lower, the brakes, discs.
Which makes clear why we have to build our own car.
Mm-hmm.
Because 7% is not worth it.
Right. So we started to touch on the fact that the Tesla Roadster may not have been ready for release yet, that it was really a prototype pushed into the field before we think its time was ready. And I'll show you why. This takes about a half a day to pull out of a car because you have to remove suspension components. But once you open it up, look at what's inside. Fuses, those are wear items. More fuses here. Contactors. Fuses on the other side. And even fuses inside the subassemblies. This is a DC to DC converter. So the serviceability of this was really a problem. If they had put a hatch on the back here, because this is accessible from the back of the car, and put all the wear components there, then it would have been much more serviceable.
Yeah.
But in 2008, to survive, these things needed to get into the hands of owners and for the company to continue to make payroll and operate.
Yeah.
So the rest of these cars, it's a variety of things. Here's one on life support. We have a lot of medical metaphors in our service activities. This is a car that was bricked, meaning that the battery reached a low enough state of charge where it would no longer accept a charge from the charge port door. It's a not uncommon situation with Roadsters. When that happens, the owner has no recourse. They used to be able to take them to the Tesla service centers and they would do a recovery. They don't do that anymore. So really the only option is to do a recovery. We have a level 1 and level 2, which trickles DC back into the battery pack to coax it back up to a certain level so the battery management system can take over and then start charging the car again. And that's what we're doing here. Is this is on a slow trickle at this point to bring it back up, and also life support so it doesn't go any lower.
And how slow is slow? A week?
Usually,
a day?
Well, there are two measurements. One is it depends on the state of charge. If it came in at like 30 miles range, that's very low. If it's 170, it could be overnight. It will come back to life. The other thing is the trickle, the amount of trickle. We limit it to 300 to 400 milliamps.
Oh, wow.
And
so
there's a safety issue there, and you don't want to overcharge lithium-ion battery cells or packs.
Is this carbon fiber that's been painted, or is this just
carbon fiber that's been painted? Yes.
Okay.
When we go next door, I'll show you some of the vintage cars that are for sale. And we've got Founders number 3 over there.
Wow.
And you can actually see the carbon fiber weave through the hood vane.
Oh, wow.
And the reason that they didn't fix it was Tesla needed to get cars into the hands of owners back then.
Yeah.
And they sold them that
If
way.
they complain, we'll fix it.
Yeah. Now, you saw the 1,000-pound battery pack. Here is the Tesla Model S, the next generation. It's the same fundamental technology. You have what are called modules inside, and let's see if we have one pulled out. I don't see one handy. They're 18650 cells, but in a horizontal configuration. And inside this tub, which is the entire floorboard of the car, you have 16 modules, they call them, instead of sheets. Same technology, same process, a bunch of 18650 cells connected in series and parallel.
Yeah.
So the battery sits underneath the floor, and you can see this one's been removed. So we have a cavity here, and this is normally where the battery sits. There is a quick disconnect in the front for coolant, and that's what the dripping is about here. There we go.
Oh, I see. Yep.
They have glycol that runs through all of the battery modules. And then in the back, you have your 400-volt high amperage connection that then connects to the drivetrain and your CAN signals that control the battery. From here, you get a lot of amperage that reaches the drive motor back here through an inverter first, which converts the DC to AC, and then feeds that 3-phase AC induction motor.
Why does it look so greasy?
This one has a bearing problem, and that's actually oil that has sprayed onto the drivetrain.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons that it's here, aside from the battery maintenance.
So there it is, and there you go. This was a 3-part video, sort of. I mean, we kind of had a long, winding conversation. We had to figure out how to break it up. Part 1 is already up. This is part 2, I think. And there will be a part 3 where I actually get to drive in a Tesla Roadster. Very fun. So what did I miss? What did I misunderstand? Leave it all in the comments below, and stay tuned, stay juicy, and I cannot wait to hear from you clever robots on the flippity flop.